Hey, good morning, all. Welcome to the Common Good Podcast. It's a Thursday, August 12th. Things are a little different today. Partly we're coming at you early. It's only 7:40 a.m. here in the Central Time Zone in Minneapolis, where I am. And normally, we're not on until 10 a.m. So good morning, America. Glad to have you.
Bright and early, yeah.
And it feels different because Dan and I are both back. Well, we've had a few days off, so that's good to be back. And it's a Thursday, and instead of talking about a particular topic of interest for the entire podcast, we're going to do a news roundup. News in 6 C's. We're moving into a little alliteration. 6 C's today that we're going to take you on a run through the news.
This is kind of a classic pastor move to have everything start with a C. Got climate change, COVID, Cuomo. Yeah.
Cameo. And then a couple of stretches, closing ceremonies for the Olympics, and construction for infrastructure. But all things that we thought are important for us to chat about today. And Dan, I had asked you, I said, hey, Dan, how'd you do sitting back down, remembering the eCam Live, ins and outs, which is the system we use for putting this out on the internet and video style. And yeah, this great comment. I said, Dan, did you remember? And you said,
it's just like riding a bike across the southern border to raise awareness about immigration and border practices.
Yeah, that's what you now say. That's now the new phrase, friends. Just like riding a bike from coast to coast along the border to raise awareness around immigration and border practices, But I'll tell you, Dan, that great phrase, just like riding a bike, somebody would say to themselves, yeah, I've ridden a bike. I sure know how. It's safe for me to ride a bike. I've thought that in the last, 7 months alone. I have ridden thousands of miles. I put so many miles on. I was on an electric bike yesterday. I don't know if you know what electric bikes are. We have 2 of them for the ride for people that don't feel like they want to pedal the whole distance we're going to ride in a day. So if you're thinking about coming with us and you want to be an electric bike, I was on it yesterday. We have 2 of them. They're terrific. Have you ever ridden an electric bike?
No, but I would like to.
I hope you do.
That's my scene right there.
I mean, you can either borrow one, buy one, from a friend or from a bike shop, or if you're in a place where they have those minute by minute or hourly rental bikes, nice bikes or whatever. A lot of times those are these electric ones as well. They're pedal assisted, so you can set a little number. The one we have goes 1 through 6, and it gives you one level of support up to 6 times that amount of support. So you just pedal a little. It's not that you're not pedaling. It's just helping you a lot. It's like someone, when you're a little kid, someone pushing you from behind. There's also a little rocket booster on this one where you just push it and it just takes over and sends it to max power, which would be 20 miles an hour.
Oh,
you
wow.
can ride 28 miles an hour if you're pedaling on these things. So I was riding that one yesterday. Came up to an intersection. The light had changed, and so I looked down to sort of change the 1 through 6 pedal assist so I could get it to a lower number when I was at the stop sign. Hit a manhole cover.
Oh no!
And had my first wipeout.
Oh gosh!
On a bike.
On any bike.
On any. I mean, when I was a kid, but I've ridden thousands of miles. So you might think to yourself, it's just like riding a bike. I know what I'm doing. I am cut up on my elbow. I don't know if you can see this on the screen.
Oh, yeah, that's gnarly.
If someone were to go back over my Google, history last night, may I have been Googling the phrase "symptoms of a broken collarbone"? No. Yes, I may have done that. So I always sit a little kicky wampus anyway. I've realized looking at the video, I'm always kind of one shoulders, but my right shoulder is just really killing me.
That's a bummer.
So come with us on the bike ride. You don't have to wipe out. Ride the electric bike. It's easy speasy. I mean, your legs are just breezing along. Your elbow, your knee, your toes, if you're wearing flip-flops like I was, your shoulder, they're going to hurt like crazy if you wipe out.
So maybe wear shoes with the electric bike.
And I was just zipping up to the pool to see little Wesley Puck, my little grandson, for just a couple of minutes. I mean, it's a mile and a half away. Didn't even have a helmet on. Terrible choice.
Oh,
terrible choice. Yeah. it was bad choice day.
That choice day.
So I am looking hard at how's my shoulder doing, putting stuff on it, icing it, hoping I don't have a broken collarbone. So Googling broken collarbones, but by the way, and like, can you bike with a broken collarbone? That might be a search query I did last night, because I started to think, if I broke my collarbone and this ride starts in a month,
Yeah.
what, I've got a lot planned here. I'm supposed to hadn't dawned on me. There's a few things I shouldn't break, like my body.
Yeah, several things.
Yeah. And Googling, can you ride with a broken collarbone? You end up in these biking articles. And apparently cyclists, which I'm not a big cyclist, I'm just becoming one for this ride, say things like, yeah, everybody breaks their collarbone if you're a real cyclist. In fact, one article said, you may not be a true cyclist until you have broken your collarbone.
And until you've broken a collarbone.
Don't want to be a true cyclist.
Do they just assume everyone's going to take a spill like that at some point if you log enough miles? Is that the logic?
That is exactly it. In fact, I called the bike company because I did break a wire that connects to the driver of the speed adjustment. So I see if I could take it in and have them, if they could fix it there at the place I bought it. I just bought the things 5 days ago. It's like the third ride. I can't have nice things rule, right? And I said to him, I hit a manhole, which was rather deep. But I've ridden my bike a lot, other bikes, and in a lot of rough environments. And I said, I feel like the handlebar moved to the side, like it twisted. So that when I hit the bump, I didn't just go over it. The handlebar twisted, and then that caused this kicky wampus thing, and I wiped out. So, but it happened so fast, I don't know. And he said, well, yeah, on the many times when I've, he didn't say the word crash, when he said when I tipped, that's the word they use. Many times when I've tipped, that's what the bike is designed to do, rather than to these aluminum bikes or steel bikes, rather than to shatter and other things. He just and I was saying, was there a problem with this particular bike? And it's like, oh no, that just happens. And
that just happens when you crash.
Now? Yeah, when you crash, just get ready to wipe out. The guy I was riding with on over the weekend, we went out on an 80-mile bike ride. Mile 27, we had a little wooden deck, a little wooden walkway over a swampy area, and his bike slid out. He fell, cracked his helmet. On the side of it, on the temple area, kind of banged up his head. So he was done riding, and then I wipe out. That's why you always wear a helmet. Exactly. I really should have had my helmet on yesterday. I'm very grateful.
Did he land in the swamp or not?
No, he didn't, but his water bottles did. They bounced off the bike and shot off the little bridge thing into the swamps. We're digging around. It was so. Come with us on the bike ride. I don't mean to spook you, and 3,000 miles. I don't know. I'm hoping we're not going to crash. We work really hard. So anyway, it's like riding a bike around here. And we hope that this, our back on our live streaming podcast today isn't like riding a bike that we hit a manhole and break a perfectly good e-bike.
Yep.
But that bike will be back in shape, and I'm quite confident I do not have a broken collarbone. I just have a very bruised and hurt shoulder from this thing.
Glad you're okay.
Well, thanks. So not to take it lightly, but immigration's important. So let's raise awareness, and no sacrifices necessary. All right. So 6 C's of news today. Let's start with COVID. Dan, we're back at it here. I mean, I really thought, that the feelings of March 2020 were gone. That feeling of what's up, what's happening, what are we doing, what's the danger, what are the mitigation practices we can use. I was thinking back that in March of 2020, no one was wearing a mask. Like, masks didn't come until April or May. Because those early days, I remember the first time I heard someone suggest that what the population will need to do to control this is to wear masks. And I remember thinking, this country is not going to wear masks. Well, I was wrong about that. This country chose to wear masks. But now here we are again. And COVID-19 Delta variant is back. And kids are vulnerable in a way that they weren't to, I guess, COVID original. And that's pretty scary.
And that's the frustrating thing, too, is you have governors now saying schools cannot mandate mask wearing. So preventing schools from doing the bare minimum to keep kids safe.
Just
Like,
madness.
I don't get it. And this
Like
is the party of like local government should know best. And
those jokers. They've never meant any of that. That was all code for don't let the federal government tell us we have to integrate our schools. Please.
yeah.
I've never bought that for a minute. Because here's the problem with it is Rick DeSantis, who I think you might be referring to as one of those in Florida, and then Greg Abbott over in Texas. The thing about these guys is they're saying like, no government's going to tell the parents what to do. Like there's an exception for parents. Government and society tells parents what to do with their children all the time.
Yeah.
There was a tragic story this week here in Minnesota about two little ones, one that died from the effects of being in a car that got up to 120 degrees. We tell parents that, you have to protect your own child. And we tell parents, that you have
what kind of car seat you have to buy. Yeah.
There's all kinds of things, because at some point it's about public health, not private health choices.
Mm-hmm.
And someone needs to say to the governors of Texas and Florida, and I think the other states, look, this is a public health decision, not a private health decision.
Yeah.
That's why we're wearing masks. A year and a half ago, I thought no one's ever going to wear a mask. We're not the kind of country that will do that. Wrong about that. We became a country that would do that to a sufficient degree. So I thought, okay, now we have set the base level that when necessary in certain crises, the country will respond in some public health ways. Let's not get to that point again.
Mm-hmm.
But if we need to, we know we can do it. Apparently, we don't know we can do it. It was like, no, we did that once. We're not doing that again, say so many people. And I thought, if children were vulnerable, if it was children who were at risk, that would really catch people's attention. Like, we would take COVID seriously, and the people who aren't taking it seriously would take it seriously if kids were at risk. Nope, just the opposite. Now they're using children and the relationship between parents and children as the rationale for why a school system can't put in mitigation procedures of everyone on the campus covering their mouth and their nose just while you're in school. Like, you don't have the mask mandate does not say that a child has to wear a mask everywhere every day.
Yeah, you don't have to wear it at home.
It's when you're in the school building
around tons of other children. Yeah,
of course you would. So to then like have this convoluted, no school can tell you how to mitigate for. I'm pretty sure that there are certain shirts that kids can't wear at school, depending on the message that's on the shirt. There's been court cases about this.
Yeah.
The freedom of speech of a person. I way back in the day, and you probably don't even know this, but way back in the 1980s, when I was a lowly high school student, I sued my school district for violating my constitutional rights of freedom of speech and freedom of religion. Yeah, it became part of the Equal Access Amendment. It was around religious causes, but anyway, it got into a whole other thing.
That's so high school, Doug.
Yeah, so high school, Doug. And you might know that that there have been other rulings that say like there's certain messages on a shirt that you can't wear at school, because your own individual freedoms of expressions do have a limitation in public spaces that are demanded. Kids are required to go to school. So if you can't afford a private school, you're not doing homeschool, you have to be there. So you should be able to put in requirements that make that a safe environment for everyone. So not only does it dictate what you can have on your shirt, kids have to wear shirts and shoes in schools.
Yeah.
Like
my kids, it's a public school, but they have to wear uniforms. They have to wear the polo shirt and the khakis. Yeah.
Really? How about that? Public schools with a uniform.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the trick. You make the mask part of the uniform.
Just part of the uniform.
Hey, we're onto something. Well, all right. So this COVID. I thought we were moving now to just having the vaccine arguments, but we've retreated now back into the mask discussion.
And now we're getting back to, should everyone have to wear a mask? Because people won't be honest and wear it if they haven't been vaccinated. So we just got to mask everybody because the people that need to wear the masks aren't doing it of their own volition.
Yeah. Well, I see that Andrew Morosky is here in the chat, and good morning from Austin, Texas. So, hey, Andrew, we know your governor's in on this, so hang in there. We know that's going on. And Chris from El Paso. Hey, Chris, we're going to be right there in El Paso. Have we been in touch yet about our ride? We're going to be there October 3rd in El Paso, October 2nd and 3rd, actually. We're going to be in El Paso. So let's stay in touch about that. And I'm just going to do a little rundown of the good mornings. Good morning, Jim. Jim's a regular listener and commenter. Jim, it's always good to see you. Your name on here. So thanks. And Joanne, I hope you get that Trek bike. And hi, Deborah. Good to see you. Mr. Bradshaw, Abdullah Peter. You're listening from Brittany, France, in Europe. Well, keep on keeping on. Yeah. Yeah, and look, all of these governors that are trying to figure out how they posture their own relationship to COVID, and they're doing it to exercise, to demonstrate a political theory, just seems so silly.
Yeah.
Like to hear Rick DeSantis and Greg Abbott say things like, "This is time for us to stand up and make sure that the individual rights of parents and children are not infringed." There are times to do that. The middle of a health crisis, when we're just moving kids back into schools after a year of kids being having to learn at home, is not. This is not the moment, nor is this really the argument to be having.
Yeah.
One could be arguing we don't need to mask children, but the idea that you can't mandate it to kids, because I'll tell you what,
school system can't decide that's the safest thing for their children.
And in some ways, I mean, look, social pressure is so much more powerful than almost anything else anyway. If you say, "Hey, kids at this school, we require you to wear a mask," and someone doesn't, you don't suspend the kid or kick the kid out. It's just that 1 or 2 or 3 out of 20, 30 kids in a class not doing it. That's probably better than all of them doing it. So the idea that this has become this huge fight, it's only become a fight because of the way that the governors are treating it. And those kids are going to put masks on, unless they're a little one that's like, "No, my dad said I don't have to wear a mask and I'm not going to wear." But like that would happen even if it wasn't a mask mandate, right? If it was just sort of a norm in the classroom. And now you're setting these poor little sweeties up for all kinds of conflict and ridicule among other students. I can't imagine how teachers are going to be dealing with this in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. It just feels like, and we're in this civics moment of, is there a sense of public anything? Like public schools remain one of the final public places that we all get involved in, with so much privatization happening in our society. It just really feels like this is something that needs to happen. And when kids are more vulnerable to this illness, it just feels to me like absolutely we should do this.
And it's been wild to see like videos of school board meetings where the community comes in and they'll have a doctor or a nurse sort of testify before the group and say, "Hey, this is why it's important to wear masks at this time."
Yeah.
And then they're walking out of the building and a mob is yelling at them saying, "We know where to find you. We know where you live." Like, what is happening?
Yes.
That's your response to a doctor saying, "This is what's best for your kids." Like, we're going to get you? Like,
yeah. That you've somehow you have done your job and your professional obligation. And so we've got eyes on you now.
Yeah.
And I saw that same video. I think it was over in Tennessee. Is that right? And there was a sheriff keeping people. It was a sheriff standing right next to a man yelling at the doctor in the car with what in all estimations were threats.
Yeah.
"We know who you are." And then the doctor in the car tried a picture of the man yelling the threats at him. The man covered up, the window with his hand so he couldn't take a picture of him. And the officer stood right there and let this nonsense go on.
Yeah.
The idea that you're going to badger someone, prevent them from moving their car, and yell what would clearly be identified by a reasonable person as threats. and no one does anything about that.
Right.
Like this is the thing. I understand that people believe that there's, liberty. But in the preamble of the Constitution, there's three things: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, or that you're allowed to sort of generate for your own goodness in the world.
Hmm.
The first on the list, life.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're supposed to be in order, but liberty doesn't overcome life. And the obligation of the government is to make sure that we create conditions by which people can stay healthy. So you have to always manage any liberties or pursuits of happiness
Hmm.
under the banner of life. That's why you can't go burning tires in your backyard. That's why you can't smoke on airplanes anymore. That's why seatbelts and car seats are mandated. That's why you can have a public hospital by which you can say to someone, to be in this area, you have to be a particular related to a patient, or wear a mask, or put on entire clothes, because health and life is something that the
Yeah.
government can make a requirement for in certain public spaces. Schools are those public spaces. This just feels like it's not an argument about COVID at all. It's a view of the world, and
Hmm.
this view of the world that individual choices and liberty is the only thing we care about
Right.
isn't even true. That's not. I mean, it's only in this case that this is being applied, and it's just it is
Yeah.
unbelievably maddening to me. Now, what it is doing is it's distracting some people like us, from not talking about should we be blaming individuals for not getting the vaccine, which I guess is sort of a shift in the COVID conversation currently. But look, maybe this, I'm not trying to be Donald Trump here. This is just going to disappear. But in other parts of the country, the Delta variant, like in India and in the UK, it was really raging and then kind of hit a tipping point and stopped.
Hmm.
Maybe that's going to happen here too. I don't know. Now there are small numbers of kids. I think in Texas it's 250 kids that are hospitalized, but that's like 250 more children hospitalized than there was back
Yeah.
last March
And
and last April.
250 more than need to be because it's
And
preventable. Yeah.
that's right. Shouldn't be
Yeah. And
shouldn't
this
be
sort of
moving this
gets
way.
to this idea of what are we willing to do for the common good, and sort of a segue into this climate report that came out. It's a pretty dire climate report saying, hey, we're headed toward a real shift in our weather patterns and sea level rise. But in this report, it's like, hey, if we pull together and do the right thing, we can stop the global warming at like 2 degrees Celsius.
Which, talk about moving the goalposts. I mean, poor climatologists and people that have dedicated their life 20 years ago, when Al Gore was advocating through the movie Inconvenient Truth, the notion that 2 degrees Celsius of global temperature increase was something no one ever wanted to cross.
Yeah, that
Now
was
we've
viewed
gotten to
as
this
catastrophic.
catastrophic. Now we've gotten to this point, and it's like, okay, can we just keep it at 2 degrees?
Yeah,
And this is what happens on these things when whole efforts won't pull together. And in some ways, like, it's easy to blame small number of activists or governors that are using these things for their own personal purposes. This climate denial business, this just feels like it's global. Like, I know there's the Paris Accords, and I know that the U.S. has now re-entered them. There doesn't seem to be any urgency.
no,
I mean, thank God for Greta going around and trying to get people all riled up, but still, there doesn't seem to be any urgency.
yeah,
Now we've come a long way, with solar and with wind power and even with water power. I mean, so much so that yesterday before my wipeout, I was putting a solar panel on the top of a cargo trailer that we're going to be pulling for the We the People ride. I mean, solar panels are simple enough, cheap enough, that for $179, I can put a solar panel on the top of that RV and run the cables down into a battery and
hmm,
have a self-cycling a power source that happens right there. So we've had these little increases to get
yeah,
off of kind of power that comes that pollutes the planet, and carbon and gas and oil. But the point of all the work around climate change wasn't so that I could put a $179 solar panel on a cargo trailer, right? Like, it was supposed to be a more grand
yeah,
vision than that. And it just does not feel like. And I feel this is a self criticism as much as pointing finger at anyone else. I just don't feel like the climate, even in the midst of all the dangers of COVID, that all the dangers of COVID could have overwhelmed it. I just feel like we're all just kicking along as if the devastation that's
Yeah.
happening to our climate is just something we're factoring in, and very few people are doing things about it. Technologies have changed to the point that it's going to slow down some just from innovation, but I don't know. It does
Yeah.
not feel like it's grabbed us by the lapels and shaken us into action here.
Right.
And maybe this new report, but it feels like every August a new report comes out that has headlines that are as stark as this one, that maybe we could do something about it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a quote in this article. It says, "Oh, where'd you go, Doug?" It says humanity may still avoid warming the planet by 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2100. On all pathways, the world's temperature will increase by more than that by the middle of the century. Current policies suggest that the planet is set for 3 degrees Celsius or more than 5 degrees Fahrenheit of warming by the end of the century. And he says, we're already seeing extreme rainfall, heat waves, and drought that are all implicitly or explicitly tied to climate change. And this is just a 1-degree world. I would not want to live in a 4-degree world, and a 3-degree world would be quite challenging, he says.
I mean, that really grabs it. It's astrophysicist Paul Wallace and I were talking about this on Friday. It's not as if the planet's going to blow up.
Right.
It's going to become uninhabitable for the kinds of life that all of us want. And this is the thing that I feel like the climate messaging needs to be around. It's not just protecting the planet. It is, but there's a larger sense.
Planet's going to be fine without us.
Right. And some kind of life is going to thrive. But like the life that we all want, the life that looks good and beautiful to human beings and to animals as we know them and see them, that's something we could do something about. It's more like how you work hard to make your house or your office a climate space that is comfortable for your thriving and enjoyment. Right?
Yeah.
That's why you put air conditioning or have fans or put in nice windows or put in a furnace or a fireplace. You do these things to make it so that your experience in your house is better for you and for the living creatures in your house. We should think about the planet that way. Like, hey, friends, this is not going to be the kind of place we're going to want to live in the same way that we're living now. So should we do something about that? And should we fix the places where it's less inhabitable for people to live? For sure.
Yeah.
And can we make our houses a place that are comfortable for us to live without destroying the outside? That also now seems possible. There's ways to reduce all of this.
Right.
But we're just not pursuing it with any level of urgency.
No, and I think the conversation has become like, are you using plastic straws or not?
Yes.
When that is such a tiny drop in the bucket. Like, we could all do our part and recycle and reuse, but 70% of the carbon emissions come from huge corporations that we don't have the power to change unless it's through federal action. So that's
right.
why personal choices are great, but we have to put pressure on the government to put in actual restrictions on carbon emissions.
Yeah, and that's doable and possible, and you can do it with restrictions. You can do it with incentives. I mean, businesses, and I know they're happening all over the world, and that's causing issues. But in the United States, especially, we can control an awful lot of the gases that are causing the planet to warm. Carbon dioxide. We can carbon dioxide. We can do a lot about that by setting different standards.
Yeah.
Even car standards, for the love. Of course we can. And look, I'm glad that there's going to be an F-150 that has a battery instead of a combustible engine.
Yeah.
Sure. But come on now. Like that a little urgency around this. But maybe this is the level of sustainable urgency we can get, just thinking about what's happened with a global pandemic and how much, how much difficulty there has been globally to get people to respond to a virus that we know is killing millions of people. maybe this is all we can get. Maybe this is as much passion and focus as we can get.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm beginning to think, yeah, maybe it's not, maybe more messaging is not going to make an appreciable difference. And that would be disappointing, of course, but I don't know. Maybe that's where we sit in all of this. All right. So climate, COVID. I could have done 7 with a bike crash, but we're not even going to throw that one in there. But climate and COVID. All right. In our six C's, let's talk about construction, and that being the infrastructure bill. We're going to build stuff apparently in this country. We're going to get back. You know what? I want to start building that manhole cover with a huge divot over there on Valley View Road. That would be great.
Let's fix that
we start
first.
there? Yeah. So here's what's going to happen. Every pothole outside of someone's house, they're going to think that now the infrastructure money is going to be used for it. And there's been $1 trillion over the next, I think it was 8 years, allocated already for hard infrastructure. And then the Democrats are going to work very hard to get another $3.5 trillion, I think over a longer period of time, maybe over 10 years, something like that, for the other kinds of infrastructure that need to happen, what they would call human infrastructure or social infrastructure. Both which are terribly important. We need both of them. But this roads and bridges kinds of thing that they're talking about, that's not going to fix your local street. This is what people kind of got, unless short of the small amount of money that's going to be moved to states or moved to cities for them to do. These are big federal infrastructure programs. So as we all pursue the common good over the next 7 years and think whatever happened to that $1 trillion or more, which is only kind of a lot of money. I mean, $1 trillion is not that much. There was some cryptocurrency heist that happened the other day. Did you see this one where some hackers got in and stole $600 million of cryptocurrency? So let's not act like $1 trillion is, over the top for the government to spend over 8 years on stuff like this. But anyway, it's an investment. It's a lot. The bridges and roads, they're going to be federal projects. So there's still an awful lot of other. Now we need them. Absolutely. We need to go in, with significant amount of time and investment, but that's going to be spread out, over light rail and passenger trains and electric vehicles and, internet access, and hopefully, lips to God's ear that it's not the crappy internet that I have right now that I have to pay so much for at my house, just extend it out to rural America so that some internet provider can continue to just rake in enormous amounts of profits. I'm going to rant for 1 second here. We need to make the internet, high speed, full capacity internet, a public utility that is subsidized by the federal government. Yeah. That's what it needs to be. There is no reason any longer that everyone who's watching this, listening to our voices, has paid for 1, sometimes 2, or somewhere through their life, 3 different fees to have the internet on your phone, in your house, and at your work. There are 3 different places that many of us are paying for the internet, and sometimes paying for the internet on devices in the same space that are paying 2 different people. Your computer and your phone are paying 2 different people outrageous amounts of money to have the internet. So yes, we need the internet because the future is going to be around communication connectivity. No doubt about it. But just to build the infrastructure so private industry can sit on top of that and reap this enormous profits. We don't need all of that expensive, AT&T, Xfinity, all the rest of it. That we can figure out how to have the internet made available as a public utility that is federally subsidized so that we get mass scale of the use of the internet. That's how we should be getting there. And no one yet that I know is talking about that. Even when they talk about broadband access, it's pretty much like give somebody, 40 megabytes per second of download speed and 3 of upload speed, at their rural house, which yes, we should have had that too. That doesn't really solve the problem. It needs to be more like the interstate system. Yeah. And less like the airline system. Right. So
Yeah, because internet isn't an option anymore for surviving in this society. Like it's
Right.
yeah.
I mean, even the number of things just that you have to do on your smartphone, the number of times that public n- public engagement is assuming that people have a smartphone. Not everybody has a phone that's this sophisticated, and so there's,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's getting the vaccine or paying your bill or getting your license tabs or whatever it is that you have to do sort of to live in the rest of society, there are just, the assumption is that the 70 or 80% people that have access to those is now going to make it the norm, and there's this leaving of people behind, and it's quite a burden, financial burden. I mean, look at your own budget and compare how much you're paying for connectivity to the internet compared to the other things you pay for in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's something that we should be dealing with. So
Yeah.
in some presidential campaigns, some congressional campaigns, some public do-gooder is going to get out there and say it's time to stop the privatization of the internet access fees, and to turn that
Mm-hmm.
into a public utility. We haven't been able to do it on healthcare so much. Even our military now, people are wanting to push toward privatization. We even have some roads that are toll roads running next to non-toll roads. So
Yeah.
that's often managed by a private company, which is just
Yeah.
madness. Like we have this tendency since the 80s to push things into privatization, and there are some things that should be done by private companies for sure. I'm all into private companies. But there's a whole lot of things that should be done by the collective that are currently being done by the private sector. And the internet is one of those. I mean, you've had 30 years to sort of be the innovators and make a bunch of money off of all this stuff. Even our rockets into orbit are now part of private enterprises with public partnerships. Could we move the other direction on the internet, please?
Yeah.
And, so I hope this infrastructure bill, funds some things, but then tries to push hard for.
Yeah. And I will say it's great to see a little bipartisanship on this. I think there's 19 Republican senators that signed off on this. And to me that seems like a no-brainer. This is stuff that's good for everyone in the country. Like everyone agrees that we need better bridges and roads and
they've been trying to do this for 4 years.
Yeah.
I mean, if Trump had a political brain, that was functional and wasn't just into narcissism and to destruction all the time, his first year in office, he would have signed this very infrastructure bill.
Yeah.
Couldn't get it done. Infrastructure Week couldn't come. And you can see why, because it consumes so much work of this administration. They've been working on this since before inauguration. We're now into August. They don't think it's going to be done until maybe November or December before they finally get this thing passed, because it's got to go to the House, and then it's got to come back to the Senate and back to the House, and then it's going to take a while. And it takes discipline and administration to be doing this and not be running. You literally can't do infrastructure in a week.
Yeah.
Can't have an infrastructure week.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, to coin a phrase, who knew it was so complicated? Well, all the people who've been trying to do a big infrastructure deal, literally, I mean, Obama was trying to do a big infrastructure deal.
Yeah.
Couldn't get it done. This is a really big, Biden deal.
Yeah.
That's going on. It's a bigger deal than almost anything else that's happened in politics. And it's the $3.5 trillion deal that's probably going to change some in its price, in its price tag, as they say. That's also going to be a really big deal. All that money that's coming in is going to be a serious thing. And the era of smart government is back, is the way I like to put it. And I hope so. I hope that's a thing, because we need a more active government and not be turning all this over to private.
Right. Well, I love that Secretary Pete, my former Mayor Pete Buttigieg, is kind of at the helm of this whole infrastructure thing.
Yeah, how about that guy?
So great.
Yeah,
he was my mayor. Now he's fixing the whole country. Love
he
it.
is. He's in all kinds of photo shots now and video shots, just standing by the side, like, "Hey, we're ready to go." Or I'm the Secretary of Transportation, and the Transportation Secretary is right at the front of the spear on this one. Who would have known? Hey, speaking of front of the spear,
Oh no, where are you going?
Yeah, it could go. We could go Cuomo. We could go Giuliani. I was going to go Cuomo. At the front of the spear, the fourth C of the day is Andrew Cuomo is saying, "Hey, in 2 weeks, I'll be done being the governor of New York because of my behavior in the past." Look,
Uh,
a lot of people were saying things like, "Boy, Andrew Cuomo is really something during COVID, right? Like that guy is coming out. He's taking charge. He's super clear. It's good to have someone saying all these things. Why? How come he's not running for president?" And people around him were like, "Oh, because the demons in that guy's closet are enormous, and he has no political friends because people have been backing away from him, and he has bullied and strong armed his way into this office and through the governorship." And so there were lots of people in the political world that were like, "Yeah, I mean, he's this is his moment, but there's a lot going on that will prevent him from." Say running for president, and that's why he didn't run. A lot of people wonder why he didn't run in 2020. Why wasn't he in the mix? Well, the things that we now know about were also apparent to everyone, which is why he put a commission together to look into it, thinking it would exonerate him, and his treatment of women and his physical crossing of legitimate boundaries and his touching and his kissing, all of which are things that he says. I don't know if you heard his
yeah,
4-minute speech, Dan. It was just among the worst. Like
something like "I'm not a creep, I'm just Italian" was one of his excuses.
Oh, really?
It just
Yeah. As a non-Italian, I don't even know how to respond to that. I don't think Italians are creeps. I'm just Italian. I was bothered by his statement. I didn't know. I crossed a line. I just didn't know how much the line had moved. That business. I didn't know how much things had changed. No, that stuff you did, it was always wrong. What you mean is you didn't know that there were consequences.
You thought you could still get away with it.
Doing that like it's never been okay to treat people this way, both in a toxic work environment and using your sexuality to sort of woo or pressure or command or intimidate or humiliate people. Yeah, no, that's get your lips off people's cheeks. Like, honestly, like there are places where, and some relationships where that's appropriate, right? There are cultures where that's appropriate. In politics in the United States, putting your lips on the cheeks of people who work for you isn't one of those.
Yeah.
I mean, and if people think that it's just like, I don't know, he just sort of friendly. No, that's like what you do at a family gathering or what you do with a group of friends, or it's not what you do in your professional capacity. And if people think, well, I don't know, how would he have ever caught up on all that? I don't know. He's living in the same world we are. Like, he's not that old. The guy's not, 314 years old that he's like, when did all this change? Like, forever it's been like this. I don't know. It is now maybe it's just because people like you and I are in a religious world where there's a lot of professional conduct things that you pay attention to in the religious world. Now, yes, many pastors cross that, many priests harm children, yes, for sure. But when those things are happening, that's crossing a line. There's professional. I go to meetings. There's entire organizations that exist to talk about this stuff. Mm-hmm. And what politicians or other people that run other businesses, they don't have these things. Well, for crying out loud. And the material you're watching in them is like from the 70s. They show these old videos of like, here's what sexual harassment in a workplace looks like. Mm-hmm. And they're like videos from the 70s. This has been going on so long. For the guy to come out and basically say, hey, I'm just me and all of you change the rules. That's the kind of thing that bullies and that people who use intimidation and pressure tactics like this use all the time. It was so sad to watch. And he vetted that thing. I think he was reading it off a teleprompter. You know what I mean?
Well, it makes you think like who's left on his staff that he's had to have chased off any normal person. And so you're left with other toxic personalities that think he's still the greatest. And so it's just how do we keep allowing these toxic men, usually white men, to continue to have positions of power. It blows my mind every time something like this comes up.
And there's so many of them, right? There's just so many places where this stuff is going on.
And that
So
it
many
always ends
people
up
who
being
stuff-
like an open secret, like you were saying,
yeah.
like, oh, everyone kind of knew about this. That's why he hasn't run for president. It's like, well, then why didn't someone do something about it earlier? It's because,
And not just the people who were most impacted by it,
Right,
right?
yeah.
Because it's not saying to the victims, why didn't you speak up sooner? It's all the other people who
Yeah.
knew this was going on.
because
that
usually
didn't
the
speak up
victims
sooner.
speak up and they're silenced,
Yes.
and somehow these guys maintain their power.
And so many of these illustrations, and the other ones too, where you'll see like these pictures and somebody, there's a group of people around, right? Like, hey, governor, get your hands off of her.
Yeah.
Hey, governor, don't grab her around the waist. Hey, don't put your don't lean your head in. Like, what are you doing? It is just like the way people get treated in work environments, whether it's with a boss that yells at them, whether it's somebody that intimidates them, whether it's this kind of like this stuff is just so over the top. I've been saying this on radio shows and podcasts for 15 years, just how maddening it is to me that workplace environments, people are allowing their bosses to act badly.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not only talking about or fellow employees. I'm not only talking about the person for whom the boss is acting badly, but everybody else standing around, dropping their eyes and shuffling their feet and doing nothing about it. It's just really, and then putting all the pressure on that person to try to articulate what exactly it was, when these are patterns of behavior that come together to make a story. I mean, when you have a positive work environment and things are good, no one can come in and say, well, what made this a great work environment? What's the one thing? What was the one time your boss did something that made this a good work environment? Because that's the thing we want to give him an award for. That's not how good work environments are formed. Good work environments are formed by daily practices, by many small actions, by a whole perspective of engagement. That's how good work environments are created.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how bad work environments are created. So this gotcha moment, this, where was the one email? What was the one thing that I did? Let's narrow this down into that one moment where you can now say, there's the line, here's you, you've crossed the line there. That's not how it always goes.
Mm-hmm.
The set of conditions that create this as a hostile place, where these, what some people refer to as, in some situations, as microaggressions. And I don't care for that particular phrase because it makes it seem like it's like a hairline fracture. Like, oh, it's just a little one. That one will go away. We have to sort of tolerate that. Like, just, that's not, nothing structural there. I know that's not what people mean by microaggressions, but that's how it can come across to people. It's just acts of aggression, right?
Yeah.
Whether they're little or small, it doesn't make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
It's their effect in a system. And so many places, especially in politics and in religion, which are two areas we like to talk about around here in the common good, there is so far too much of these environments, and people that are working in terrible ones. I know you can't always get out, but if you can speak up on behalf of someone else, or get a group of people together and try to raise those voices, but just no, it's not normal. It shouldn't be that way.
Yeah.
It's just really.
Yeah. It's frustrating because, I've heard stories where, someone has been sexually assaulted in the workplace by the boss, and they do all the right things. They go to HR, they get a lawyer, and their lawyer is basically like, well, your best case scenario is to settle out of court and sign an NDA, and you can never talk about it, and the boss goes away scot-free, and the company has insurance to cover this sort of thing. So it's like the best case scenario is you get a little bit of money and the perpetrator has zero consequences.
Right. And the beat goes on.
Yeah.
As Sonny and Cher saying. Yep.
Yeah.
That's right, Dan. That is so wise. That's what happens. And that's the structural cultural change that needs to take place. Mm-hmm. Hey, speaking of just wackadoodleness, Cameo, are you familiar with Cameo?
Yeah. Yeah.
So Cameo is this software that allows someone to make a quick video, a little cameo appearance, especially for celebrities and famous people, to send you a message. And some Swedish company has figured out that celebrities will make these videos for $20 an hour, a minute, for $200 for a thing, for $3,000. And Rudy Giuliani is now on here, $275. So just a week ago, I was out in California, and we looked at a video that someone had commissioned through Cameo of Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin did a video for this person's mother and father's 45th or 50th wedding anniversary. So there's Sarah Palin in her house, and this video is like 6 minutes long.
Oh, wow.
Hey there, Gail and George. And she just goes on and on, talks about her dogs. Like, it was surreal. And it was like recorded 3 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
So we're having this whole discussion, and it costs $199 for him to do this. And I'm like, why is Sarah Palin doing this for $200? And they're like, oh, because she just does a bunch of them in a row, and they're going to make all this money. And I'm doing the math. I'm like, you can't make enough money to make this worth it. Like, I know you sit down and they have an app that, like, you have a little script in there, but that's all this stuff just takes a lot of work and effort. But apparently Rudy Giuliani's on there now too. And for $275, he will make a video for you on whatever you want.
For your birthday next year.
Now, as two guys that sit in front of a camera and look at it and talk about stuff for no pay at all, I guess we are testimony to the fact that people will do this kind of stuff. And we're not even disbarred lawyers, or former people of renowned public service, like Giuliani. Just something. I mean, when does this guy finally how does Cameo become the thing? Now, I know there's some people that make $1 million a year or more than that. The person that was on The Office, I can't remember which character he was. He was the accountant guy,
Kevin?
kind of slow talking. Kevin?
Yeah.
He's the highest paid guy in Cameo. Makes like $1 million
people love
a
him.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's
good for him.
He's figured it out, how to do it. But why is this really the best case for Rudy Giuliani? Like, between trying to, what in his mind is stop the end of democracy through a stolen presidential election, to, hey, I'll make a spot for you for about anything you want for $275. I mean, these are guys that bill out rates of, $500 an hour, and he's going to, just make these videos. He's going to sit in front of a camera and just read scripts I don't know. It just seems so bizarre. Like, I can see that people do little Cameo things for fun. A lot of celebrities that do this, they donate the money to charities, and they're like, hey, I'm going to generate $30,000 a year for this charity, so I'm going to sit on here and give birthday greetings to people. It's kind of fun. Not for an income stream for the former mayor of New York and or Sarah Palin. It was just shocking to me to see Sarah Palin given, maybe it was Christmas time, giving Christmas wishes, to a sweet couple in Tennessee somewhere. Really, really something. So I don't know. Maybe the world of what's available to these folks is not as bright as I thought that it was, where they have to.
Well, hopefully, in this case, his actions had consequences, and no one wants to hire him for things because he tried to push this big lie of a stolen election and hitched his wagon to a failed, twice impeached president.
Yeah, maybe it's just maybe he's finally found the bottom of that pit. That's right. He's trying to jump out of it. And apparently his law partner, there's a whole bunch of court cases about how they've defamed Dominion voting systems and all. And his law partner, former law partner, said yesterday, made a statement. We were in a presidential election. There is absolutely no obligation for us to tell the truth in anything that we say when you're in an election.
Wow.
A lawyer saying there's no obligation upon us to tell the truth.
That's wild. Like, it's just assumed everything everyone's saying is a lie.
Yes.
And obviously, we don't have to tell the truth.
This is a game we're playing. Jeez. It's like playing the game Mafia or something, or a reality TV show. That's not the point. Is to tell the truth. The point is to drive viewership. Well,
and that's been the argument on, like, Fox News is like, well, you can't take what we say seriously about Dominion voting machines. Like,
right. No reasonable person would. I think
No
that would be.
reasonable person would believe what we're saying about these voting machine companies.
Well, in closing, the closing ceremonies of the Olympics are final C: climate, COVID, Cuomo, Cameo, construction, and closing ceremonies. See what we did
Yeah.
there? That's just professional pastoring,
Yeah,
sermonizing,
that's
just
decades of
brought to you.
pastoring.
Just natural. How'd you feel about the Olympics? Were the closing ceremonies fitting for the Olympics?
I'll be honest, I missed the closing ceremonies, but I enjoyed
Mm.
the Olympics. I
Yeah.
I didn't think I'd get into it as much as I did, but
What'd you enjoy particularly?
I
Do you have a
loved the
thing?
swimming and diving. That was great. I just
Hmm.
sort of had it on in the background, and then every once in a while, like a race would come on, and uh, it was like a really long, like 800 meters, and this American swimmer came from behind to win, and all of a sudden, I'm into the Olympics. It's great.
There you are. I found the NBC treatment of the Olympics, the stuff that I watched, to not feel great. It did. Just the way they kind of put it all together and the way it was
Mm,
sort of cut up and so many pauses between things. I don't know. It felt different. I don't know if they did the Olympics differently, if they covered them differently. I don't know what was going on, but something felt a little quirky
yeah.
about how it was presented. It seems to me that it would be better if there were other sports covered by other networks. Like that would just be
Mm,
kind of great, right? Like so you get a different feel because you get sort of this universalized NBC approach to all the little snippets that we'd see
yeah.
on pieces. It would just be fun to say like I don't know, ESPN's going to cover the skateboarding thing, and
Hmm.
I don't know, the Golf Channel always covers golf, or ABC does some fun stuff with fencing, and they kind
Yeah.
of build the whole thing into it and like put an entire ecosystem into play around the Olympics rather
Yeah.
than
Did you see where
one.
Nickelodeon was doing some sports? Like they did a couple football
No.
games, I think, and just made it, really crazy and fun and
Oh, that's
interactive.
great.
They should have
Yeah,
done
so
like ping pong or something, like
totally. Yes, and had people like set up ping pong tables and watch it while you're playing. Like just do something more than there's a formality to the NBC
yeah,
overlay that just seems like, oh, good grief, it doesn't fit the Olympic, especially doesn't fit between sporting activities. They all
yeah.
have a different vibe, and so
And the level of energy was just different because these athletes are, competing to no one. So there's no
yes.
crowd noise. There's no like
Well,
energy
that's
from the
yeah,
crowd.
that's right. But I guess as a top-notch athlete, you would say like, "Oh, I block out the crowd anyway. That's what I'm able to do." Unless there's no crowd, and then the deafening silence is just
Can you block
crushing
out
you.
the deafening silence? Yeah.
I need the white noise of the crowd behind me.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thanks to all of you making your comments, Mike, Numfree. Thanks for following along, Adam, Jim, Annette, Patricia. Let's make sure we kind of get everybody. Lynn, thank you. Sue, we know there's so many of these coming in. Rich, Kim. Hey, and just so some of you know, Andrew, Chris, we put this out on multiple streams at the same time. So some of you are on Periscope, some of you are on Facebook, some people are seeing this on YouTube. So you may not even see everybody else's comments. We see them, and so sometimes it's easy to slide them in. Sometimes it's a bit more difficult, but we appreciate all of you listening, and share this with your friends and family, of course. And hit that subscribe button. I've been watching so many YouTube videos about things recently because of building out a trailer and the biking thing and just all the stuff going on, and it's so much that I need to sort of learn up on. And YouTube is there's so many very helpful people out there in
Yeah.
the world that want to help you on YouTube. And every time somebody says, like, hey, someone's do these long intros, like, be sure to hit the subscribe button. And I don't know, I never hit the subscribe button when they say that. I don't think I'm just being obstinate. I'm just like,
Yeah, a lot of times I'm looking for an answer to a very specific question.
one thing.
I don't need to follow all your videos on other things.
And they're going to start showing up. And
Yeah.
yeah, the rest of it, I was just kind of coming in for one. But if this is your thing that you do want to follow for other things,
Smash that subscribe button.
boom. They oftentimes do this too.
Yeah, they do a lot of that. Yeah.
A lot of hand gestures at the camera. And if you're just listening on the audio side, great, good for you. Keep that workout going. We haven't given you a full hour here, but keep working out. And also let us know that you listen and share it around with some friends. And we will see you down the road. And we're going to be off tomorrow. Do you know this, Dan? We talk about
I
this yet?
didn't, but that's great.
Yeah.
Works out
Yeah,
great.
we're going to be off tomorrow on Friday. But back on Monday and back all week next week. And we'll see you then, friends.
All right. Bye, everybody.